Hello, my name is Jim Toot, and I'm an Associate Professor of Political Science at Central Virginia Community College. Bureaucracy, Part 2. The federal bureaucracy is a creature of Congress and the President, but agencies independently make policy and exert power, legislating by rulemaking, executing by implementation, and adjudicating by hearing complaints, prosecuting cases, and judging disputes. Congresses and presidents often enact laws setting forth broad goals with little ideas of how to get there. They get publicity in the media and take credit for addressing a problem and pass tough questions on how to solve the problem to the bureaucracy. In 1971, OSHA began a process of rulemaking, issuing statements to clarify current and future policy in an area authorized by the law. It had to decide on answers for questions: what work conditions produce or endanger safety, what work conditions threaten workers' health, and how far is so far as possible. Congress requires agencies to follow prescribed detailed procedures in issuing a rule. In 1934, the Federal Register, which prints all rules and decisions made by agencies, was launched to provide a common source. In the first round, the agency interprets the statute to be applied and lists grounds for a preliminary decision. Next, it invites feedback, holding hearings or eliciting written comments from the public, Congress, and elsewhere in the executive branch. Then it issues a final rule, after which litigation can ensue. The rule may be annulled if the courts conclude that the agency did not adequately justify it. Any rule listed in the Federal Register has the status and force of a law. The agency can modify the rule only by the same arduous procedure. The bureaucracy makes policy through implementation or applying general policies to given cases. Agencies transform abstract legal language into specific plans and organizational structures. Some implementation can be easily measured, but ambiguous goals can pose problems for agencies. For example, in determining eligibility for supplemental security income and disability insurance, figuring out who is disabled enough to qualify is far more complex than determining the criteria of eligibility for retirement. Agencies act like courts through administrative adjudication, applying rules and precedents to individual cases in an adversarial setting with the defense and prosecution. Some, like the National Labor Relations Board, or NLRB, act as both prosecutor and judge. Rulings may be appealed to the full NLRB. Only after these procedures are completed may the case go to federal court. How can civil servants prove that they are doing their jobs? On a day-to-day basis, it's hard to show that vague policy goals are being met. Instead, they demonstrate that the agency is following agreed-upon routines for processing cases or standard operating procedures. Agencies are alert to and heed the power of the President and Congress over their activities. But agencies can effectively influence Congress and the President as much as the other way around. And if Congress and the Presidents disagree, agencies are in the happy situation of responding to the branch that is closer to what they want to do. The signs of an agency's power include: 1. The legal authority Congress and the Presidents accorded; 2. The size and continuity of its budget; and 3. Deference it gains from expertise. But each of these hallmarks amount to little without political support, especially from those individuals and groups most interested in or affected by an agency's decision. Without such support, agencies find their programs confined by others, their budgets slashed, and their claims to expertise doubted. Agencies work to create and maintain political support from the President, Congress, and the public. Favorable media coverage is instrumental in building this political support. Agencies also obtain political support by shifting policies when new political participants challenge their standard approach. Agencies are part of the executive branch. Presidents select heads of agencies and make numerous other political appointments to direct and control them. But political appointees have short careers in their offices. They average just over 2 years. Presidents are tempted to pursue implementation by agencies to accomplish policy goals that Congress has frustrated. Tools of this administrative presidency include establishing agencies, strategic appointments, internal reorganization, and budget cuts. Presidents can set up an agency by executive order and dare Congress not to authorize and fund it. President John F. Kennedy issued an executive order to launch the Peace Corps after Congress did not act on his legislative request. Only then did Congress authorize and allocate money for the new venture. Agencies created by presidents are smaller than those begun by Congress, but presidents have more control of their structure and personnel. Presidents make strategic appointments. Agency personnel are open to change when new appointees take office. Presidents can appoint true believer ideologues to the cabinet who become prominent in the news, stand firm against the sway of civil service, and deflect criticism away from the president. Presidents also can and do fire agency officials who question the White House line. Presidents who dislike an agency's program can decide not to replace departing staffers. Presidents can rearrange an agency's organizational chart. Presidents pursue the administrative presidency most effectively with programs that are obscure or unpopular with the public. Otherwise, they risk reaction on Capitol Hill. But the administrative presidency does not work unless presidents and their political appointees clearly articulate what they wish to accomplish at the outset. Bureaucrats cannot respond to conflicting or confused signals from political appointees. Communicating clearly to a far-flung executive branch is a key reason why presidents are determined to craft a line of the day and disseminate it through the executive branch. George W. Bush went so far as to make sure that the press office and each cabinet department were appointed by the White House. Presidential appointments, especially of cabinet secretaries, are one way to control the bureaucracy. But cabinet secretaries have multiple loyalties. The Senate's power to confirm nominees means that the appointees answer to Congress as well as the president. In office, each secretary is not based at the White House, but at a particular agency, amid a framework of established relations, of goals already fixed, of forces long set in motion, in an impersonal bureaucratic structure resistant to change. Some cabinet secretaries value their independence and individuality above the president's agenda. Treasury secretaries often come to Washington directly from success as chief executive officers of corporations. Cabinet secretaries craft strategies of getting into the news to boost their reputations and influence both inside and outside of their departments. Surrounded by civil servants who justify and defend department policies, cabinet secretaries are inclined to advocate the department's programs rather than the presidential initiatives. For example, while Republicans have long proposed abolishing the Department of Energy, Republican energy secretaries resist such an effort. Civil servants often shape outcomes as much as presidents and cabinet secretaries. The decisions they make may or may not be in line with their superiors' intentions, or they may structure information to limit the decisions of those above them, changing ambiguous shades of gray to a more stark black and white. By the time the process culminates at the apex, the top-level officials are more often than not confronted with the task of deciding which set of decisions to accept. Congress makes laws fixing the functions, jurisdictions, and goals of agencies. It sets agencies' budgets and conditions for how funds must be used. They can demote, merge, or abolish any agency they find wanting. Longevity does not guarantee survival. Congress can cut its budget, restrict the scope of regulation or the tools used, or specify different procedures. Congress monitors agency activities by congressional oversight. Members gather information on agency performance and communicate to agencies about how well, or more often, how poorly they are doing. Agencies can work for continued congressional funding by building public support for the agency and its program. Agencies can make it hard for Congress to close them down or reduce their budget even when public opinion is mixed. Agencies choose how much money to spend on implementing a program. They spread resources across many districts and states in the hope that affected legislators will be less inclined to oppose their programs. For example, numerous presidents have proposed that the perennially money-losing government corporation Amtrak be zeroed out, but Amtrak has survived time and again. Why? Although train riders are few outside the Northeast, Amtrak trains regularly serve almost all of the continental 48 states, providing local pressure to keep a national train system going. In summary, the bureaucracy often makes sweeping policy decisions. It legislates by rulemaking, executes the law by implementing it, and adjudicates by addressing individual cases in adversarial settings with defense and prosecution. Agencies constantly search for political support to ensure an adequate budget and enhance their independence. They are subject to control by, but also influence, the president, who proposes their budget, creates new agencies, and appoints their leaders. Agencies are also subject to control by Congress, which funds their programs and determines their scope.